here to stay. Massive
For
Mall.
the vast majority of my students who join MassiveMall.com or were a part of my classes at Amazing Talker, they always say the same thing. They want to build up their fluency. They want to sound natural. Now, at the same time, when they went to school, the learning school, they had to learn the tenses. And for them, the tenses were very, very intimidating. Why? Because you had to learn 12 tenses. And for many of my students, those 12 tenses were so difficult to master and to learn. But what if I were to tell you that in reality, you don't have to learn 12 tenses? You actually just need to learn 4 tenses and understand that it is used in 3 different ways. But then, what if I told you that you actually only have to use 2 tenses in those 4 different ways? Now, I know that you're getting confused. Well, what does all this mean? Dividing it up to 3, 4, 2, all of that. What does that mean? I'm going to tell you the secret. And this is one of my foundational lessons. So if you really want to understand this, make sure to take my foundational lesson. However, everything that I teach my students in my classes is here in this podcast today.
Here to stay.
12 tenses. Now, one thing that you want to remember is that in English, we have what is called states. We have 3 different states. We have the past, present, and future states. That's the first thing that you have to remember, especially if you're one of my Asian language learners. And the reason why is because if you're speaking Chinese, from what I understand, you don't express your language, Chinese, in the same way. So you don't have states in the same way that we do in English. And that is where I catch a lot of the mistakes that some of my students might make. So that's the first thing. The other things are known as aspects. Now, what is an aspect? The aspect is how something is related to the state. So, what are the aspects? We have what is called the continuous aspect, and we have the simple aspect. Now, keep those 2 things in mind because I'm going to say them again. We also have the perfect simple and the perfect continuous. So, do you see what I did there? 3 states. Now, we repeat it 4 times. Past, simple, past, continuous. Past, simple, perfect. Past, continuous, perfect. You see? It's just repeated. And then you do that for the present and you do that for the future. So now when you're looking at all the 12 grammar states, you will notice that it's actually just 3 and 2. Now, there are little differences that we have to remember. So we're going to primarily be focusing on the simple and the continuous. But before we do that, I want to tell you one major important thing. And what is that? The tense that you want to get correct is also the simplest. That's why it's called simple. The simple state. If you master the simple state, then everything else in English will fall into place. Because simple tense is the most commonly used state. It only does one thing. Well, 3 things. But those 3 things are kind of like one thing. Now, I know in your school, and this is one of those problems with a lot of those English schools, is that they'll tell you, oh, well, the simple state does facts, it does habits and routines. Well, guess what? A habit and a routine is just a fact. So that's one thing. So why do I say that it's actually three things? Well, it does three things. It's a fact, an opinion, or a lie. That is the simple state. You're either going to tell me a fact, an opinion, or a lie. What does that mean? Well, subject, verb, object. That is the formula for the simple tense, and it's for all of it. I walk to school. That would be a fact. I wake up at 9 a.m. every day. That's a lie, but it could also be a fact. And I think elephants are small. That's an opinion or a lie. So all of them follow the same formula. But you'll notice that I put a habit, I wake up at 9, with the same thing. It's still subject, verb, object. But you say, well, we have it in the past tense and in the present tense, right? You said present and, well, if you want to say it in the past, just add ed at the end of the verb. I walked, ed, I walked to school every day. Now it's past. I walked to school, present. Future, will. Just add will, and you're good to go. I will walk to school. So, will is for future. You don't even have to really learn anything with will. You just add it in. Just remember, if I'm talking about the future, just say will. I will walk to work tomorrow. I will ride my bike to school. I will go to the park. Will is the word for the future, but that we have to use now to talk about the future. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I like to confuse my students. Present tense is just the verb. That's it. Past tense, it's ed. But the formula is the same. Don't forget, however, that English always have to kind of throw you a curveball. That's an idiom. It's a baseball idiom, and it means to kind of throw something that's going to confuse you. So we do have irregular verbs, and those irregular verbs you'll catch on. You'll get those irregular verbs little by little. The more you practice English, the more you read, the more you listen, you'll start figuring out the irregular verbs. So, like, for example, if you say, I wake up at 5, right? Okay, so past tense, you would actually say, I woke up at 5. Now, don't worry about it. It comes with the territory of learning a language. There's always that little something that's going to be confusing. So that's the simple tense. So in reality, in just 5 minutes, you've learned all of the simple states in 5 minutes. Now you just got to study it. That's why this lesson is in video format for my students now, so that they quickly can refer back to it whenever they want. But now let's talk about the continuous. Okay? Now, the continuous is ing, also with the verb. So the verb plus ing. The other thing that you also want to remember is that all continuous sentences, continuous tense sentences, will use an auxiliary verb, no exception. For the present, it is I am, he is, you are, we are, they are, she is, it is. Okay, is, are, am. Those are the auxiliary verbs that you always have to use with the present continuous tense. Now, in the past continuous tense, you have two auxiliary verbs that you always have to use. Was and were. Was is for me, like I was, and was is for singular. He was, she was, it was. And were is for plural. We were, they were, and you were. Now, you is one of those little things that gets annoying. You is singular, as in you, and you is plural, as in you, as in the group, okay? So that's the other thing. So that's it. You've just learned all 12 tenses. Isn't that amazing? You've just learned all 12 tenses because you've now figured out that it is the same two tenses, simple and continuous, that is repeated 3 times. But you said, yeah, but David, there's perfect tense. Now, perfect tense is very rare. So you could probably get away with never using perfect tense. I haven't used, oh wow, I can't say that. But you don't use perfect tense very often. What is the purpose of perfect tense? Perfect tense. What's the purpose? The purpose of perfect tense is to talk about a time, and usually you kind of just think about it in a box. It's absolute. So it's very based on a time that is specifically related. So we use it a lot when we're talking about experiences in our lives. So there's very, very few times in which you have to use perfect tense. Many times when you use it, you could actually just use the past tense. For example, I went to Disneyland. Now, that's just talk about an experience that you had in the past. That's past simple. So why will someone want to say it in the perfect tense? I had been, or I have been, to Disneyland. Well, now you're talking about an experience in your life that's major for you. And because of that importance, a lot of people will use the perfect tense. There are some times in which you have to use the perfect tense. For example, I have been studying. Now, if you say I have been studying, that means that in this period of time that you were studying. And you really can't say I was studying or I am studying. Now, why can't you say I was studying and I am studying? Why can't you say that? Because you might be studying now. You might have started in the past and it's continuing to this moment. And so now that you want to talk about something that started in the past and continues to right now, you want to use the perfect tense. So you can't say I was studying because that means that you're not studying now. And you cannot say I am studying because that might mean that you weren't studying before. And that's one of those times in which you have to use the perfect continuous tense. So if I say I have been studying, then that means that you started studying sometime in the past and you are going into it now. Now, why is that important? It's important because let's say, for example, you're a child and your mom says, you had better be doing your homework, right? When I get home from work, you better be finished. So your mom, she comes home from work and she says, what have you been doing? Now, notice I said perfect tense. What have, because have been is your clue for perfect tense. Have been. And you say, I have been studying. That means that from the time that your mom told you to start studying till now, you are studying. Now, that means that you have been doing your job, studying. So you don't want to say, oh, I am studying. Well, what were you doing before? Playing video games? I thought I told you to be studying. So now if you say, I have been studying, that handles all those problems. And so that's why the perfect continuous is necessary, is because it talks about a set period of time. And present continuous is something that you started in the past and you are doing up until now. And the same thing can be said about the simple perfect. I have been to Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin. That's just saying an experience, a completed action that is done. That's it. And so those are the two tenses. And now what do you have to do? Well, now you just have to practice the different situations. Generally, when you want to know somebody better, you can start with perfect tense because you want to know their life stories, their experiences. So you might be at a restaurant or you might be talking to somebody at a seminar and you might say, oh, have you been to many meetings or many seminars? The have been is talking about completed actions. Oh, yes, I've been to many of these. Or no, this is my first one. So that is one of the reasons why a lot of people use the perfect state. But like I said, almost everything is going to be the simple state. But now, I briefly want to talk to you about the continuous state. And this is one of those things that I don't know why, but a lot of schools kind of overlook, or they kind of, what we in English we say, gloss over. So they don't cover it seriously. That's an idiom, to gloss over. And that is to cover something without major focus. Continuous tense in schools is often taught as it only has one purpose. That's not true. Continuous tense actually has two major focuses. But we want to remember one thing. Continuous is continuity. Another way is that people refer to it as progressive. So some schools, they don't call it continuous tense. They call it the progressive tense, which is progression. And progression, continuity, continuous is all based on duration. So they're all connected to time. That means that we have two types of times. One is what you are doing right now. And that is what most schools they say. Okay, so continuous tense is what you're doing now. Let's move on to something else in English. And that's fine. You could definitely say that because that's true. It is what you're doing now. However, it could also be what you're doing around the time of speaking, as long as it's a duration or a continuous activity. The example that I often give to my students at massivemall.com is the following. Let's say that you're at a restaurant, you're eating at a restaurant, and your friend comes in and says, John, what are you doing here? Now, if you notice, that is a present continuous question. Now, let's say that you're eating a sandwich. Now, are you going to say that? Oh, I am eating a sandwich. John is not stupid. He can see that you're eating a sandwich. So that probably is not the question that he's asking. He's asking, why are you here in this area? For example, let's say that you haven't seen John in a little while or in a while. Maybe you're in a different state and you're in his state or his neck of the woods. There's another idiom for you, neck of the woods, and that means that you're in his part of the place where he lives. Okay, so, my neck of the woods is in Cayambe, Ecuador. That's where I live. So you might say, oh, my neck of the woods is Taiwan. So that's where you hang out. That's where you most pass the time. So Taipei, Taiwan. Oh, my neck of the woods is the 101 building. So that's the area that you hang out the most. But I digress. Let's continue with the major issue. So you're in his neck of the woods, right? So he's asking you that. Why are you in this city? Why are you here? Then you might say, I am looking for a job. But here's the thing. Are you looking for a job? University in 2020.
Massive Maw. Learning made fun, here to stay. Massive Maw.
All right, sorry about that. I'm doing some editing at the same time as making another video. So I'm editing one video and making another video, trying to get this ball rolling. Another idiom. Get the ball rolling is to start moving, start doing something. Okay, so going back to the illustration. What that means is that when we are talking about continuity, I'm looking for a job is your continuous action for this moment. So you could actually use it for a lot of different things. For example, I am working at Massive Maw, but I might not be working at that moment, but my duration is Massive Maw English. I am working at Massive Maw English. But right now, you're right, I am eating a sandwich. So duration could be what you're doing around the moment of speaking, your continuous actions at this time. I'm taking piano lessons. Now, at this very second, I'm not taking piano lessons, but every day this week, I am taking piano lessons. I am taking piano lessons for the last 6 months. So it continues. Duration, continuous tense. All right, so that is the lesson for today. That is the 12 tenses. For your homework, what I want you to do is try to use all the 12 tenses in a single story. And if you're one of my students at the No Class class, feel free to use this opportunity to tell the story on the social media, and I will get back to you and give you any kind of feedback and corrections that you may need. And one last thing, keep it simple. Sentences should be simple first, and then little by little, as you get used to the structure, used to the formulas, then you could add more to it. So that's the lesson for today. I hope you liked it, and I hope to see you again very, very soon. Bye-bye.
Massive Maw. Learning made fun, here to stay. Massive Maw. Right with Massive Maw. Massive Maw. Street and boss and fuss, stress. Massive Maw. Slanging and saying the science Maw. Slay in like the Massive Maw. Finger smooth as clay, don't fear late. Chew a penis Maw. Say it bold, it's your turn. Massive Maw. Speak it right all day, every lay. Massive Maw. Say it loud and don't delay. Massive Maw. Learning made fun, here to stay. Massive Maw. English your way, it's Massive Maw. Yeah. Massive Maw. Massive Maw.
Massive Maw. Massive Maw.
Massive Maw. Massive Maw. Massive Maw. Learn to speak it right with Massive Maw. Street or smart, it's all Massive Maw. Nouns and verbs, no stress. Maw. Slang and idioms, less. Massive Maw. Grammar rules that click. Massive Maw. Speak it smooth and quick. Massive maw. Chill, repeat, and learn. Massive maw. Say it bold, it's your turn. Massive maw. Speak it right all day, every way. Massive maw. Say it loud and don't delay. Massive maw. Learning made fun, here to stay. Massive maw. English your way, it's massive maw. Massive maw. Massive maw. Massive maw. Massive maw. Massive maw. Massive maw.